In the later days of the Unification Wars on Terra, the Third Legion was raised beside its brother legions. Many of its finest warriors came from the courts and blood vassals of Europa, where humbled nobles offered up their sons to the Emperor as tribute after their defeat by the Imperial Thunder regiments. From each noble house, young men were taken. Some families surrendered them grudgingly, thinking of them as hostages, while others gave them freely, eager to prove their loyalty. House Loculus of Comarch is remembered for sending all of its sons at the moment of capitulation, and thereafter offering the firstborn of each generation to the Legion without hesitation. In time, other Terran dynasties followed this example. The ranks of the Third Legion were filled with the flower of Terra's youth, their ancestry steeped in ancient traditions of war. They formed a martial brotherhood shaped by aristocratic blood and long memory. During the early campaigns, the Legion did not always march as a single overwhelming force. Instead, they often supported the young Imperial army, guiding and commanding its troops in battle. Where other legions were used as shock forces supported by heavy machinery, the Third found its place among diverse armies, understanding their strengths and their flaws with a natural instinct. In the Antarctic Clearance Campaign, history credits Army Group Antilles with victory, yet careful study reveals that it was the Third Legion who shaped the strategy and carried it through. When the Bronze Host took Nadarin, they did so under the watchful eye of the Legion, and the fifth raising of Jove set 2 was accomplished largely by their hand, even if their name was not foremost in the rolls of honor. Again and again, they showed an ability not only to fulfill the Emperor's intent, but to surpass it. In these early years, they proved themselves precise instruments of his will, steady and assured amid the storms of war. After the Proximan betrayal in the early Great Crusade, the Third Legion received a singular honor. They alone were granted the right to bear the Palatine Aquila, the Emperor's personal standard, upon their arms and armor, a privilege no other legion would share until after the great betrayal of later years. The honor was paid for in blood. The 16th cohort, assigned to the compliance ceremonies on Proxima and serving as the Emperor's honor guard, stood firm during a sudden insurrection. They fought beside the Legio Custodes and did not yield an inch as the attack unfolded across the ceremonial plaza. When the enemy unleashed a vortex weapon and the Emperor was wounded, those warriors held their ground to the last, buying him time to recover and carve a path free from the trap. In recognition of their sacrifice, the Emperor placed the standard of the Palatine Aquila into their keeping with his own hand and granted them the right to end the revolt by exterminatus. From that day forward, the Aquila was not only a symbol of the Imperium and loyalty to its master. For the Third Legion, it also spoke of their own deeds. In moments of greatest danger, members of the newly named Emperor's children served as aquilifers and equerries, bearing the eagle standard into battle and into diplomatic halls alike. Clad in lacquered imperial purple to mark their station, they accompanied emissaries and commanded newly conquered forces in the Emperor's name. The sight of the eagle carried by one of his favored warriors was often enough to steady wavering allies, For a time, it was common for them to carry his wishes and orders across the growing Imperium. Others bore his words, but in those years, the Emperor's children were regarded as his voice. Not long after their triumph at Proxima, disaster struck the Legion. Nearly all of their gene seed stock was lost, and the blow fell within a single year of their moment of greatest honor. As the Wars of Unity expanded beyond Terra, the pacification of the Selenar gene cults of Luna and the Treaty of Mars allowed the Imperium to create new space marines at an unprecedented pace. A portion of the Legion's gene seed reserve was sent to Luna for implantation, yet what happened to that shipment remains unclear. Some claimed sabotage by resistant cults. Others spoke of a docking accident, and still others whispered that the vessel simply vanished. Though this loss was severe, it might have been endured. The Legion could still recover progenoid glands from their fallen and grow new gene seed from them, and an emergency reserve was kept on Terra for every Legion. But in a single night, that final safeguard was destroyed. A fast-acting viral blight infected several gene vaults. Its origin was unknown, and many believed it to be artificial. The Genitors of the Mechanicum labored to halt its spread, yet the infection defied all treatment until the Emperor himself intervened to purge the taint. Other legions suffered losses, but for the third, the effect was absolute. Their remaining reserve was destroyed in its entirety. From that moment, the Legion began to wither. As others grew in number and glory, they could replace their dead only through the slow recovery of progenoid glands. Without their Primarch's genome as a template, rebuilding was painfully slow. Battle after battle drained their strength, and it seemed certain they would fall below effective fighting numbers before recovery was possible. Doom appeared inevitable until the rediscovery of their Primarch, Fulgrim, changed the course of their fate. Fulgrim's gestation capsule came to rest upon Kamos, a resource-poor mining world shrouded in perpetual twilight beneath a small binary star and a thick nebula. Once settled during the dark age of technology, Kamos had been cut off by warp storms during the Age of Strife and left to decline. Its people labored without rest in vapor mines and synthesizers, sustaining fortress factories that produced what little they could. Recreation and art had long been sacrificed for survival, and even food was scarce. Orphans were routinely put to death to preserve resources. When scouts of the fortress factory at Galax discovered the infant within the capsule, they were struck by his beauty and begged that his life be spared. Raised by one of the caretakers, Fulgrim grew swiftly into legend. Even as a youth, he mastered the mining technology of his world and improved it with quiet insight. By 15 Terran years of age, he had risen to become one of the executives governing Galax. Under his guidance, ancient outposts were reclaimed and repaired, and production surged. Surpluses appeared for the first time in decades, and with them came renewed trade. As prosperity returned, Fulgrim encouraged the rebirth of Demosion art and culture. the world that had known only toil began, slowly, to breathe again. In the year 830 of the 31st millennium, Stormbird dropships descended from the twilight skies of Demos, bearing the Palatine Aquila upon their hulls. Fulgrim felt something stir within him when he beheld that symbol. Though Gamos had no true army, the caretakers surrounded the landing zone. Fulgrim ordered them to welcome the visitors and bring them to Calyx. There, in his private chambers, he met the warriors from the stars, and among them the Emperor himself. At the sight of his Gene father, Fulgrim knelt and offered his sword in service. He returned to Terra and learned of the devastation that had befallen the Legion created from his genome. Only 200 Astartes remained, each bearing the banner of companies lost or reduced to a handful. They stood proud despite their losses. Fulgrim gave them the charge of carrying the Emperor's wisdom to the stars, and the Emperor confirmed a name long whispered among them. From that day, they were the Emperor's children. Their panoply was recorded as Imperial Purple, marked by the eagle's talon spur and the unique right to bear the Palatine Aquila. Driven by a fierce desire to justify the honor shown to them, Fulgrim and his legion embraced a relentless pursuit of perfection, in war and in culture alike. Silver-haired and adorned in purple and gold, the Phoenician embodied that ideal, determined that neither he nor his sons would ever fall short again. With so few warriors at his command, Fulgrim could not begin his conquests alone. The Emperor entrusted his recovery to Horus Lupercal, and for over a decade the Emperor's children fought beside the Luna Wolves. In battle, their temperaments balanced one another. Horus was swift and instinctive, while Fulgrim was patient and deliberate. The bond between them deepened, and their legions grew close as oath brothers. In time, new recruits from Terra and Deimos swelled the ranks of the Emperor's children, and their fortress monastery was established at Calax. When they were judged ready, Fulgrim took command of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet and set out to reclaim worlds for the Imperium. Among those worlds was La Darren, an advanced Xenos domain whose conquest would shape the destiny of the Phoenician. Fulgrim's friendship with Ferrus Manus was forged as surely as any blade. They met beneath Mount Narodnia, where Ferrus labored at the great forge of the Urals, his liquid metal hands shaping wonders of steel. Challenged by pride and good humor, the two Primarchs worked for months without rest. At last, Fulgrim crafted the Warhammer Forgebreaker, and Ferrus forged the burning blade called Fireblade. Each declared the other's creation superior, and in a quiet gesture of respect, they exchanged weapons, sealing their brotherhood. Later, within the Imperial Palace, Fulgrim delighted in the statues and treasures brought by Sanguinius, while Ferrus dismissed such beauty as a distraction from conquest. Laughing, Fulgrim called him a terrible Gorgon, and the name endured. Though different in temperament, the Phoenician and the Gorgon stood bound by craft, rivalry, and mutual admiration, their friendship bright within the growing Imperium. The Emperor's children pursued perfection with relentless focus. No achievement satisfied them, and no honor was enough. When others excelled, they sought to surpass them, and when they failed, pride turned to jealousy. On the ocean world of Laeran, the Legion encountered the Serpentine Lair, whose society was shaped by elaborate genetic engineering and devotion to Slaanesh. Their floating coral islands circled a central nexus that concealed a vast temple. Chief Apothecary Fabius studied the lair and saw in their manipulations a reflection of his own ambitions. He spoke to Fulgrim of enhancing the Astartes themselves, seeking a higher state of perfection. The Primarch granted him leave to pursue this dangerous path. During the final assault, Fulgrim discovered within the temple a silver sword set in black stone, adorned with a crude amethyst gem. It was a demon blade, vessel of a greater daemon. Unaware of the true nature of what he held, Fulgrim claimed it. The blade whispered to him, and slowly its influence deepened. What began as quiet thoughts grew into a presence he could no longer deny. Encouraged by Horus, already fallen to the ruinous powers, Fulgrim surrendered himself to chaos and to the Prince of Pleasure, believing he had found the path to ultimate perfection. After Laeran, the wounded dwindled, and Fabius turned his full attention to his experiments. He relocated to a quiet research facility aboard the strike cruiser Andronius, under the authority of Lord Commander Eidolon. With Eidolon's blessing, the apothecary gathered specialized gene engineering equipment and worked in secrecy. Though the Lord Commander disapproved of certain methods, he took a personal interest in the results. Eidolon declared that when the time came, he himself would submit to enhancement, seeking to become faster and deadlier than before. He wished to stand as the Primarch's indispensable right hand, shaped by Fabius's art. In the latter Great Crusade, the Iron Hands encountered the Diasporex, a fleet-based civilization of humans and Xenos. Offered a chance to separate and join the Imperium, the humans refused. The Iron Hands moved to destroy them, yet the Diasporex proved elusive and skilled, even damaging the strike cruiser Farum. Reinforcements came in the form of the Emperor's children, and together they struck at hidden solar collector arrays that sustained the wandering fleet. Drawn into open battle, the Diasporex fought fiercely. Fulgrim's gunship, the Firebird, came under heavy attack until Ferrus Manus, aboard the battle barge Fist of Iron, rushed to his aid. Fulgrim led a boarding assault, yet when victory was secured by a subordinate, resentment took root within him. Under the growing influence of the demon blade, he saw pride and insult where there had been courage and jest. Thus, even before the galaxy was torn apart, the shadow within the Phoenician deepened, quiet and persistent, like a whisper carried on distant stars. A shadow began to coil around Fulgrim after the cleansing of Laeran. Some believed the blade he had taken there whispered to him its presence slow and patient. The taint of Slaanesh lingered not only upon him, but upon many of his warriors who had walked among the Serpentine Lair. On the maiden world of Tarsus, he stood before the far-seer Eldrad Ulthuran of Ulthway. the Eldari spoke of Horus, wounded by the Keenabrak anathema on Davin, touched by powers that fed upon his weakness. Fulgrim heard the warning, yet anger rose in him like fire. His loyalty to Horus ran deep, second only to the bond he shared with Ferrus Manus. The demon blade urged rejection, and rage answered. Fulgrim attacked the Eldari host without restraint. In the clash that followed, Wraithlord Kirin Goldel fell, and even an avatar of Kaine was brought low. The Phoenix Guard were slain before the Eldari withdrew, sorrowful and certain that another Primarch had been claimed. Soon after, Fulgrim met Horus face to face. The War Master's voice was steady, persuasive, filled with promise. Doubt faded. In its place grew a vision of perfection that only chaos could grant. The Emperor's dream seemed small beside it. Ferrus Manus would not accept such betrayal. In the quiet chamber of the Fist of Iron, brother faced brother. Fireblade shattered beneath Necrodermis' hands, and Forgebreaker was raised but not brought down. Even then, Fulgrim could not strike the killing blow. War followed. On Istvan Extremis, Edolan's altered voice shattered a monstrous war-singer. Across the Legion, perfection twisted into hunger for sensation. What had once been discipline became excess, and what had once been loyalty became something darker. Not all within the Legion welcomed the change. Lord Commander Vespasian held fast to honor, gathering those who still remembered what they had been. He had stood on Tarsus and heard Eldred's warning. The truth lingered with him. On Calynidus, he saw companies abandoned in battle. Suspicion hardened into resolve. When he confronted Fulgrim in private, the answer came swiftly. The Amathame pierced his throat, and silence followed. In the Istvan system, Horus set his design in motion. Loyalists were sent to Istvan III under the guise of duty. At the moment of victory, life-eater virus bombs fell from orbit, flesh dissolved. 12 billion civilians perished in an instant. The psychic scream rippled through the warp and dimmed even the Astronomicon. Saul Darvitz, warned in time, reached the surface with Nathaniel Garrow of the Eisenstein. Their message spread among the doomed. Some found shelter before the sky burned. Angron descended in fury when the virus failed to finish the task. Companies of World Eaters followed him into slaughter. Horus cursed the delay, yet reinforced the attack. In the end, only a handful escaped, the Eisenstein fleeing toward Terra with news that could not be ignored. The battle on Istvan V unfolded beneath a darkened sky. Ferrus Manus led the first wave into the Urgal Depression, with Vulcan and Corax at his side. Drop pods fell like meteors, titans strode across ash and broken stone. Then the second wave arrived, and betrayal revealed itself in gunfire. Night Lords, Iron Warriors, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion turned their weapons upon their supposed allies. The trap closed. Ferrus sought Fulgrim amid the carnage. Around them, the Phoenix Guard clashed with Morlock Terminators in storms of light. The duel between brothers burned bright and terrible. Fireblade met Forgebreaker, and then the Daemon Sword flashed. Ferrus Manus fell, his head struck from his body. Elsewhere, aboard the Bride of the Emperor, Pequakinska's Maravillia had already torn open a veil between worlds. The music became ritual. Instruments screamed with power. Demonettes stepped from the warp. In the chaos, Astartes took up the strange devices and found within them weapons of sound. The first noise marines were born in that blood-soaked theater. Later, Fulgrim stood beside Perturabo and spoke of a weapon hidden within the Eye of Terror, the Angel Exterminatus. It was a promise of glory, of something vast and final, and the path toward it led to a lost world at the heart of nightmare. On Istvan V, amid smoke and shattered armor, Ferrus Manus pressed forward through the defenders. Fulgrim waited, a faint smile upon his lips that did not reach his eyes. Their final clash carried the weight of everything they had once shared. They fought with fury and with memory. Forgebreaker rose and fell. Fireblade burned in wide arcs. When the demon's sword bit deep, Ferrus fell to his knees. Fulgrim hesitated, then could not stop the blow. The blade moved as if it willed itself. The head of the Iron Hand's Primarch struck the ground. In that moment, clarity flickered within Fulgrim, and horror followed, yet weakness opened a door. A greater presence claimed him, and his consciousness was bound within a painting in La Fenice, the ruined theater aboard his flagship. When he later stood before Horus, something in him was altered. Lorgar saw it first. In a council of traitor Primarchs, the word-bearer struck him with his Crozius, declaring that the being before them was no true brother. Psychic frost filled the chamber as truth pressed close. The demon within Fulgrim endured, watched, and waited. The secret remained contained, for now, while the war moved onward. Doubt grew quietly among the Emperor's children. Lucius sensed a change in his lord, a subtle weakness in swordplay, a distance in ritual. Dreams led him back to La Fenice, where the great portrait still hung above broken seats and shattered stage. In its painted eyes, he saw anguish. He believed his Primarch trapped within the canvas. Gathering the Brotherhood of the Phoenix in secret, he dared to seize Fulgrim and bind him for excruciation in the Apothecarion. Yet the truth was not what he expected. Fulgrim tore free and revealed that he had cast the daemon into the painting, reclaiming his body through knowledge learned in torment. The ruse had been deliberate, a test and a lesson. With that, he set his gaze upon a new ambition. The assault on Prismatica 5 was ordered to claim a crystal for a city of mirrors devoted to sensation. And beyond that lay a meeting with Perturabo and a journey toward the Eye of Terror. On Hydra Cordatus, Perturabo received Fulgrim with caution. Once they had shared a respect for discipline and perfection, though each walked a different path. Now, Fulgrim offered something wondrous, and spoke of the Angel Exterminatus, hidden within a warp rift that had haunted Perturabo's dreams. Their fleets traveled toward Idris, a lost crone world at the heart of the Eye of Terror. Unknown to them, survivors of Istvan aboard the Sisypheum followed in secret, guided by fractured communications and an Eldari hand. Orbital fires scarred Idris. legions descended in waves within the citadel of Amani-Shak Kaelis. Crystalline guardians stirred. Revenant constructs rose in their thousands to defend the sepulchre of Isha's doom. As battle raged, Fulgrim drew Perdurabo deeper, down into a hollow world lit by a seething green light. There, he confessed that the angel Exterminatus was not a weapon to be found, but a transformation to be achieved. The Magadar stone gifted to Perdurabo had been draining him slowly. His life would fuel Fulgrim's ascent. In the chamber's heart, the Magadar stone changed hands. The Raven Guard Cherokee shattered it with a single shot. The stolen strength surged back into Perdurabo, and Fulgrim's body convulsed in response. Armor flaked away in burning fragments. Flesh swelled and twisted. Perdurabo rose and brought Forgebreaker down in a final decisive arc. Fulgrim's mortal shell burst apart in blinding radiance. From the light emerged something new, horned and serpentine, radiant and terrible. Fulgrim rose as a daemon prince of Slaanesh. He spoke of future meetings, then vanished with his legion in a flare of warp light. Idris began to tear itself apart as the force at its heart failed. The iron hands withdrew. Perdurabo led his warriors to the iron blood and made a choice. Rather than flee, he ordered his fleet into the black hole at the center of the eye, trusting that fate had not finished with him. After his apotheosis, Fulgrim answered Horus at the Battle of Dwell and moved among the Helicarnaxes stars. He bent House Divine toward chaos before the coming struggle on Molech, then drifted from the main war, absorbed in the great game within the warp. During the Pale Stars campaign, he returned briefly, delighting in the slaughter of inductii and vanishing again in a burst of light. When the time came to gather at Ullanor for the final march on Terra, he was absent. Lorgar sought him within the Palace of Pleasure. There, amid decadence and the presence of Nakari, Fulgrim refused the call. As blades were raised, Sardu Lyak spoke the true name of Fulgrim's new form. Bound by that word, he was forced to return. At Ullanor, the Legion reformed around him, yet Lorgar's secret plan to supplant Horus unraveled. Actea revealed the scheme. Fulgrim was freed, and Lorgar was cast aside, bloodied but alive. At Terra, discipline within the Emperor's children had dissolved entirely. While other legions pressed the assault, they indulged in cruelty across the throne world. Fulgrim taunted Angren and waited for his moment. When he led an attack against the Saturnian Gate, he chose to fight in his mortal form. Imperial fists fell before him until Sigismund stood in his path. The duel was fierce, and soon Rogal Dorn himself entered the fray. Dorn's blade pierced Fulgrim through, yet the Daemon Prince laughed and healed. News came that Abaddon's gambit beneath the gate had failed. Bored and irritated, Fulgrim shed his mortal guise and withdrew, leaving the Phoenix Guard to attempt a futile assassination. The Legion continued its descent into excess as the siege ground on. As Terra burned, Chemos met its own destruction at the hands of Imperial forces. The remnants of the Legion fled toward the Pale Stars near Nocturne. There There they lingered until the salamanders drove them away during the Great Scouring. Thus, the path of Fulgrim and his legion moved ever outward, shaped by excess and ambition. From Lahiron to Terra, from brotherhood to apotheosis, the journey unfolded not as a sudden fall, but as a slow turning toward a different kind of perfection, one that glowed with a dangerous and unending light. After the Horus Heresy, Fulgrim was seen once more in real space, crossing blades with rowboat Gilliman during the bitter wars of the Great Scouring. Their duel unfolded aboard the Bride of the Emperor at the Battle of Thessalia, where Fulgrim's warp-sharpened senses found the old scar left upon Gilliman at Gelf. With a poisoned blade he struck, and the Primarch of the Ultramarines fell, mortally wounded. Gilliman was borne away by his Gene sons and placed within stasis, returned to Maghreb to rest within the Temple of Correction inside the fortress of Hera. There he lay for uncounted generations, an object of pilgrimage and devotion, until his resurrection during the Ultramar campaign of the 13th Black Crusade. Fulgrim, meanwhile, withdrew into the warp, retreating to a daemon world, his interest in the Loyalists spent. In the shadowed years after the siege of Terra, much of the Emperor's children's path is hidden. When Horus was slain aboard the vengeful spirit, the Legion fled toward the Eye of Terror, leaving depopulated worlds behind them. Their cruelty consumed their own supply of captives, and soon they turned upon their fellow traitor legions in wars later called the Legion Wars or the Slave Wars. These struggles shattered what unity remained. During that violent era, Fabius Bill attempted to steal the corpse of Horus from the demon world of Melium and clone him, hoping to restore the War Master. The assault awakened Ezekiel Abaddon from despair. Reforging the sons of Horus as the Black Legion, he struck back. Harmony, the Emperor's children's new Thrawn world, felt his wrath when a derelict Thousand Suns vessel was hurled from the vengeful spirit into its heart. The impact devastated Canticle City, and in the chaos, Abaddon confronted Horus Reborn. With the Talon of Horus, he destroyed the clone, claiming the mantle of War Master of Chaos. As centuries passed, Fulgrim's fate became a mystery. Granted apotheosis by the Prince of Chaos, he became a daemon Primarch, his form reshaped into a serpentine figure with 4 arms and wings reminiscent of the lair. On a Slaneshi world he renamed Kallax, after the capital of Demos. He spent Terran centuries recreating memories of his lost home. He fought old battles again and again, seeking a perfect victory, sometimes even allowing himself to lose. Few have found Kallax. Some among the Emperor's children and even agents of the Ordo Malleus have sought it, drawn by tales of excess beyond mortal imagining. Abaddon himself located Fulgrim there in the 41st millennium, trading an unblemished psyker from Pythos to secure Slaneish's favor. During the 13th Black Crusade, Fulgrim was believed to have appeared at the Cacophony of Extremis 6, where sonic weapons toppled starscrapers and billions perished. Imperial regiments answered the call for vengeance, yet they were destroyed, and a vast serpent-bodied daemon was seen among the carnage. Many believed it was Fulgrim returned to real space. At the close of the Ultramar campaign, Gilliman rose once more through the work of Belisarius Cawl. through the warp, Fulgrim felt his brother's awakening, and the long enmity between them stirred again. When Gilliman stepped before the Imperium after 10,000 years, Fulgrim reached out through the warp and possessed the Archconsul of Mograg. Through that unwilling vessel he spoke, taunting his brother and warning of temptations yet to come. Later, in the era Indomitus during the Sabby's Planet Strike campaign, the Iron Hands of Clan Raukon sought vengeance for Ferrus Manus. Sin Grulvok stood alone before the Daemon Prince to buy time for refugees to flee. When defeat could no longer be denied, Clark Kalag assumed command of the Shattered Clan. On the ruined world of Istvan III, long reduced to a dead world, ancient Rylanor endured within a collapsed hangar beside an unexploded virus bomb. Driven by centuries of isolation, he fashioned a beacon from the wreckage of sonic weapons to lure Fulgrim back. The Daemon Primarch answered. Rylanor detonated the bomb when Fulgrim tore him from his sarcophagus. Though sorcery shielded the blast for a moment, betrayal among the Thousand Suns allowed the Life Eater to burn once more. Yet Fulgrim rose again from cinders, his body reforming even as his bride suffered a wound deeper than any flame could inflict. Before the 41st millennium began, Fabius Bill achieved what he had long sought. He created a flawless clone of Fulgrim, pure as the Primarch had once been. This new Fulgrim remembered the Great Crusade and the Heresy, and he spoke with regret, vowing atonement, bile, fearing that the same flaws would bloom again, betrayed the clone to Trazine the Infinite, who placed him within his collection upon Solamnes. With the birth of the Great Rift in the era Indomitus, the Emperor's children grew ever more active. Their raids tore at reality itself, and Fulgrim began to appear beside his scattered warbands, spreading sensation and ruin wherever he manifested. Before their fall at the dawn of the Horus Heresy, the warriors of the Third Legion wore armor lacquered in imperial purple and gold. The colors marked their rank and their place as the Emperor's chosen. Upon their chest plates rested the Palatine Aquila, the golden double-headed eagle, placed there by the Emperor's own hand, after their ancient victory in the Proximan betrayal. In the era of the Great Crusade, that symbol was theirs alone. No other legion bore the Aquila as a sign of such favor. It fed a pride already strong within them, and in time, that pride opened the way for Horus's flattery and Fulgrim's relentless pursuit of perfection, which slowly carried them toward ruin. Long before those bright colors, the first warriors of the Space Marine legions marched to war in Stormcloud Grey. Their armor carried only the thunderbolt and lightning of Imperial Unity's Raptor Imperialis. As years passed, each legion claimed its own marks and its own name, and the Emperor's children began to adorn their armor with honors earned through skill and deed. Their panoply grew intricate, rich with heraldry. A helmet crest spoke quietly of status within the legion. White enamel inlay traced rank and lineage, a tradition older than their reunion with the Primarch Fulgrim. Seal papers bearing oaths of moment were fixed to their armor, binding the bearer to fulfill sworn duties at any cost. In the later years of the Great Crusade, personal adornment became ever more elaborate. The Eye of Horus appeared upon their war gear, marking service to the War Master and possible ties to the warrior lodge known as the Brotherhood of the Phoenix. When the Horus Heresy broke across the Imperium, their colors changed once more. They repainted their armor in hues that honored Slaanesh, soft pastels of pink and black, and bright clashing tones that jarred the eye. No two suits were alike. Each heretic Astartes carried a different pattern, as if seeking sensation even in color. Among their ranks, Noise Marines became common, their presence as striking as their armor. In the 41st millennium, an Emperor's Children warrior appears almost unreal. His armor glitters in eye-watering purple and harsh gold, covered in decoration and filigree that seems to creep like vines. Pale flesh shows through the gaps, pierced with needles and rings. His eyes are wide and dark, the pupils swallowing the iris, as if they have seen too much and can never turn away. They are not blind, yet they do not rest. They see everything, and that endless sight leaves them hollow. During the Great Crusade, the badge of the Emperor's Children was a golden eagle's wing ending in a talon. It formed part of the Aquila, the Emperor's own heraldry, and only this legion was permitted to wear it. The symbol rested upon their armor as a quiet declaration of favor. Officers bore a grander version, crafted from precious metals. A gold wing and talon clasped a purple jewel, catching the light and marking authority within the legion. When the Horus Heresy began, those proud emblems were joined by darker signs. The warriors adorned their garish armor with the symbols and sigils of Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure. The 8-pointed Star of Chaos appeared as well, a heretical icon shared among the traitor legions, woven into their new and blasphemous identity. Chemos was once the homeworld of the Emperor's Children, long before their corruption by the Chaos god Slaanesh and their betrayal of the Emperor of Mankind during the Horus Heresy. It was there, on that distant world, that the Primarch Fulgrim was discovered by the Emperor during the Great Crusade, a moment that would bind the fate of the Legion to their lost world. In ancient days, Chemos was known to the Imperium as both a civilized world and a mining world. Its identity was shaped by industry and endurance, by the steady labor that sustained it. Yet after the Horus Heresy came to its close, an edict of exterminatus was declared against Chemos. The Imperium destroyed it, as it did the other hopelessly corrupted homeworlds of the traitor legions. Since that time, Chemos has remained a dead world. Now, in the 41st millennium, the Third Legion endures only in small and fragmented warbands. Each has claimed its own base within the Eye of Terror, striking from those dark territories against the domains of the false emperor. There are also rumors, whispered and uncertain, of a daemon world within the Eye of Terror, devoted to pleasure and ruled by the daemon Primarch Fulgrim. Whether such a world truly exists, and how many Emperor's Children he still commands there, if any at all, remains unknown. Before the Great Betrayal, the Emperor's Children moved with careful purpose. Their legion reflected the mind of Fulgrim, who believed that nothing was too small to perfect. Every action was deliberate, weighed for beauty as well as function. Form and order were not simply preferred, they were expected. Authority flowed in clean lines. Each warrior understood his place and the measure of his worth. Honors were granted, never assumed, and those gifted directly by the Primarch were treasured above all others. This certainty bred devotion, and that devotion carried them into battle with a confidence that bordered on faith in their own superiority. Their formations were precise and usually uniform. Where there was variation, it was intentional. The squad stood at the heart of the Legion, small in number but exact in purpose. Each unit trained tirelessly within its chosen role, believing there was no form of warfare beyond their reach. Speed held pride of place among their virtues. Swiftness in thought, in maneuver, in the first strike was seen as the surest path to victory. This belief shaped their war gear and their plans. Assault units equipped with jump packs filled the skies, and jet bike sky hunter squads swept forward like legends reborn. Fulgrim admired their elegance. The image of banners streaming behind swift champions, riding into the sun. Practical concerns guided them as well. The Legion had never possessed the numbers for grinding wars of attrition. They relied instead on planning so thorough that little was left to chance. Terrain, weather, supply lines, allied forces, all were considered. When everything unfolded as foreseen, they were devastating. Yet if some vital element vanished without warning, confusion could follow. Before the atrocity on Istvan III, the Legion stood at roughly 110,000 warriors, arranged into around 30 millennials. Many were marked for death when loyalty and treachery divided them. The purge cost dearly. Perhaps 20,000 lost even among the traitors, leaving their strength much diminished. Armored vehicles were destroyed in bitter intra-legion conflict, and at Istvan V they deployed whatever remained, favoring swift transports for sudden encirclements while heavier engines were assigned as needed. In the later war, desperate attempts to restore their numbers led to gene seed experiments and the work of renegade apothecaries such as Fabius Billet. Freed from restraint, they altered flesh to mirror inner corruption. Even before psychic powers were banned, the Legion had shunned them. Mutation implied imperfection, and imperfection had no place within the Emperor's children. During the Great Crusade, the Legion maintained a warrior lodge known as the Brotherhood of the Phoenix. Unlike the looser lodges of other legions, theirs was formal and restricted, open only to the Primarch, the Lord Commanders, and the company captains. Hierarchy remained intact, even in fellowship. Fulgrim stood above all, and beneath him were 10 Lord Commanders who led the first 10 millennials. These officers formed his inner circle, paragons of nobility and skill. Eidolon and Vespasian were counted among their finest. They commanded vast campaigns, sometimes leading forces drawn from other legions and millions of imperial soldiers. Failure, when it occurred, could demand the ultimate penance. Beneath them stretched an intricate chain of authority, descending through commanders, tribunes, captains, centurions, and finally to the line warrior. Each space marine looked upward, for example, and this constant imitation fostered a devotion that bordered on worship, Fulgrim and beyond him the Emperor were revered with fervor few could match. Excellence gave rise to specialist formations. The Sun Killers bore less cannons and delivered disciplined heavy fire. The wings of the Phoenician mastered jump-back assault, led by an officer styled the Eagle King. Closest to Fulgrim stood the Phoenix Guard, 200 warriors chosen to honor the Legion's rebirth. They followed him everywhere, from the conquest of Laron to his fatal meeting with Ferrus Manus. Slain and reformed, they endured through the long war, though their final fate remains uncertain. There were also the brotherhoods of the Palatine Blades, assembled when a worthy foe appeared. Drawn from the finest swordsmen, they sought out enemy champions, dueling with skill honed through relentless sparring. At Morabe Drifts, more than 100 fought together under Fulgrim's eye. In the closing days of the Crusade, Fabius shaped a new and darker creation. The Cacophony were altered with forbidden knowledge and armed with psychosonic weapons inspired by the Lair, first unleashed during the atrocities at Istvan. They marked the beginning of what would become the Noise Marines. Mortal allies were not untouched. The once honored righteous blades of the Imperial army followed their masters into damnation and became the Roaring Blades, their loyalty twisted into devotion to Slaanesh. The Legion's structure encompassed many named millennials and companies, each carrying its own history into the fires of the coming heresy. Some formations carried stories that linger long after the Legion shattered. The 7th Millennial fought through the darkest battles of the heresy, from Istvan to Terra itself. The 12th Millennial, later reduced to the 12th Company, followed Captain Gasperos Delmar into corruption. At the Siege of Terra, they burned Sunset City, leaving atrocity in their wake. In time, Delmar became the Radiant King in his joyful repose, leading his own warband beyond the Eye of Terror. They assaulted the craft world Lugganath alongside Fabius Bile, and there the Radiant King fell before his ascent to demonhood. Survivors faced harsh choices, some serving Bile, others dying in feudal rebellion. On Solemnes, amid intrigue and attempted assassination, many were slain by the cloned Fulgrim or by Necrons, and Savona was set over the few who remained. Elsewhere, the 28th Millennial fought beside the Dark Angels at Migana. The 34th, known as the Death Eagles, remained loyal and became Black Shields, their ultimate fate uncertain after wars in the Coronid Deeps. The 39th was destroyed by the Space Wolves during the fall of Bastel III. Many companies bore their own names and commanders, some later transforming into independent warbands such as the Perfecti. Across the Legion's once ordered ranks, identities shifted and endured even as unity faded. After the heresy, the Legion's careful order dissolved. Battles among the traitor legions in the Eye of Terror scattered them, and without Fulgrim's steady presence, they fractured into warbands. Titles such as Sardar appeared for a time, claimed by leaders seeking authority in the ruins. By the 41st millennium, only scattered warbands remained, each guided by its own commander and bound by selfish devotion to Slaanesh. Pleasure and sensation became their sole purpose. They kept the name Emperor's Children, finding delight in the insult it carried for the Imperium they had betrayed. Their armor grew ornate and grotesque, colored in pastels and adorned with silks and chains. Through Slaaneish's gifts they felt pain and pleasure through ceramite as though it were flesh. Some claimed even their blades could taste blood. Many became noise marines, their senses heightened beyond reason. Sound ruled their minds. Blast masters and doom sirens unleashed waves that shattered flesh, while the warp scream dulled those nearby. The louder the battle, the greater the ecstasy. Their raids in the Era Indomitus were swift and theatrical. They struck, gathered slaves and resources, then vanished. Warbands varied wildly in size, some small, others vast, yet few matched the cohesion of other traitor legions. Each warband revolved around a powerful lord. Some were lords exultant, weaving elaborate plans as if crafting art. Others were lords cacophonist, orchestrating choirs of sonic destruction that stirred the warp itself. Within these warbands walked the flawless blades, champions who surrendered entirely to the thrill of close combat. They saw themselves as heirs to the ancient Palatine blades, though twisted by excess. Stims and substances kept them in constant exhilaration, and their mutated forms echoed the daemons they revered. Each bore a personalized bliss blade, honed through countless duels. Mercy held no appeal. Only spectacle and superiority mattered. Noise marines pursued sensation through sound. Their armor sprouted vents and organ batteries, and their hearing grew impossibly acute through Fabius's alterations. Sonic blasters, blastmasters, and doom sirens transformed music into destruction. The roots of this lay in the work of Pikwakinska aboard the Bride of the Emperor. Seeking ultimate sensation, she composed the Maravikla and crafted instruments to reproduce what she had heard on La Erin. When performed in La Fenice, the music tore a veil between worlds. Chaos flooded the hall, mutations erupted, and violence consumed the audience. Demonettes emerged, and Astartes who grasped the instruments found they could unleash destructive waves of sound. From this chaos, the cacophony formed under Julius Caesaron, becoming the first noise marines. In later ages, noise marines would serve beyond the Emperor's children, yet always as devotees of Slaanesh. Among the common warriors, two temperaments often emerged. Infractors rushed into close combat with dueling sabers and bolt pistols, driven by hunger for new sensations. They plunged deep into enemy lines, caring little for objectives unless it suited them. Rival squads competed to leave the most vivid trail of destruction. Their leaders, called obsessionists, carried power swords or rapture lashes along with plasma pistols. Tormentors favored ranged combat. Clad in corrupted chaos power armor and armed with ornate bolters, they sought speed and aggression. They claimed to embody a noble ideal, yet their pride was boundless. They invented missions to display their skill and despised the dull task of holding ground. Some intertwined their armor senses with their weapons. Others wielded plasma guns or meltaguns. Like the infractors, their leaders bore the title Obsessionist. In all these forms, the legion that once prized perfection had become something else entirely, yet still carried echoes of what it had been. Before the shadow of corruption touched them, the Third Legion accepted nothing short of perfection. Every waking hour was devoted to mastery. Whether a warrior served as foot soldier, driver, gunner, scout, or sniper, he trained without pause, refining his role until it became second nature. No detail of battle was ignored. Terrain, weather, the timing of reserves, even the smallest shift in deployment were studied and shaped to advantage. Nothing was entrusted to chance. In combat, they showed a courage equal to any space marine who ever lived, sustained by the example of their peers and by a deep and personal belief in duty. They fought with the same resolve, whether engaged in a vast planetary assault or in the quiet tension of a simple patrol. It was widely believed that no warrior of the Emperor's children had ever been routed. That same demand for excellence extended to those who fought beside them. Hesitation or inefficiency in allied Imperial army units, or even among brother Astartes, was not endured. Their guiding principle was to lead by example, a conviction woven into every fiber of the Legion. They had little patience for any other approach. To them, before their fall, war was perfection made manifest in violence, in intent, and in action. They took pride not only in their brilliance upon the battlefield, but in their ability to reproduce any formation or strategy with flawless precision whenever called upon. Among the many tactics they employed, one in particular drew the admiration of their praetors. It was known as the Murus Scara, the killing cut. Borrowing its name from a difficult strike preserved in the lore of the pan-Europic dueling cults before Terran unification, it required a swift and perfectly timed feint, one that engaged an enemy's guard just long enough for a second and fatal blow to fall, leaving no defense and no escape. According to the surviving monuments seized by the Inquisition, the Emperor's children did not truly deify the Emperor, yet their devotion to him burned with a strength equal to that of any later follower of the imperial cult. Under Fulgrim's guidance, they believed the Emperor stood as the highest expression of humanity, and that only by walking in his example could one approach full human potential. Anyone who resisted that goal was considered beneath notice, unworthy of regard, yet their reverence followed a strict order. The Emperor's perfection flowed first into the Primarchs, then into the officers of the legions, and from there into squad sergeants and the line Space Marines. Ordinary humans were expected to imitate the Astartes as best they could, despite their lesser station. It is said that this hierarchy made the Legion vulnerable. When Fulgrim and his officers turned, the rest simply followed the figures they believed embodied perfection. If those paragons declared that loyalty to the Emperor was to be replaced by devotion to Slanesh, many accepted the shift with unsettling ease. Before their fall, they were certain that the Emperor would one day conquer the galaxy completely. With every obstacle removed, human civilization would achieve its ultimate refinement. Though war was central to their lives, they also honored music, sculpture, and art. Artisans from across the Imperium shaped their armor and weapons, to flawless standards. Diversity of learning was encouraged, and few paths of knowledge were barred to them. They strove always to stand above others in the art of war. Victory, in their view, should unfold like a flawless design, guided by careful strategy and executed with precision. Some named them arrogant even then, but any insult was met with blood. Dueling, common among many legions, became for them something deeper. It was not only practice, but a reflection of the warrior's inner self. Their blades were chosen with care and admiration. Swords crafted on distant worlds were treasured, especially the Jarnabal sabers of old Terran tradition, each forged through ancient ritual and alchemical craft. Fine weapons taken from defeated foes were claimed as trophies. A warrior would master such a blade until he surpassed its former owner, believing that through this act he overcame the enemy in spirit as well as in battle. Regathian glass glaives, friction axes from the Norvik sinks, Aegissene Sainti, Tuonela mortuary swords, Terran gladi, and Martian-forged power blades all found their way into the hands of their champions. Quality alone mattered, even if the weapon came from alien hands. Perfection was sought not only in skill, but in flesh. For some, the Emperor's design was only a beginning. Quietly, years before open treachery, a few tampered with gene seed and altered their progenoid glands. Surgical augmentation was undertaken by those who shared this hidden obsession. The darkest consequences would surface during the terrible civil war after the Istvan III atrocity, yet the roots had grown long before. The Legion's apothecaries stood at the center of this quiet change. Their apothecarian was larger than that of most legions, proud of its work and fearful of failure, haunted by memories of near extinction. In time, forbidden medica practices would spread and become warp-tainted, and one name would echo through history: Lieutenant Commander Fabius, the Legion's chief apothecary at the time of the heresy. It is known that their purity checks were thorough. Whether they crossed into correction is a question that lingers. Some warriors bore hidden alterations even before Istvan III. Beneath flawless armor, there were sharpened senses, altered musculature, even changes to the mind itself, no longer aligned with the Emperor's ordained pattern. What began with a few became a quiet cult within the Legion. More than any outside lodge, it was their own pride in flesh and perfection that guided them, step by step, toward damnation. When Slaanesh claimed them, everything that had come before was remade. The surviving warriors of the Emperor's children now pursue only their most base desires, believing morality itself to be an illusion. To them, chaos and the teachings of the Prince of Pleasure offer a new path to enlightenment for humanity and all thinking beings. To outsiders, they appear as deranged and self-absorbed killers, yet they see this only as the beginning of deeper knowledge. Fulgrim once observed that all men are slaves to something, whether ambition, morality, or the Emperor himself. In that thought, they find justification. Centuries of infighting have broken any unity they once possessed. They fight alone or in small war bands, striking with savage delight and reveling in destruction. Constant indulgence has dulled ordinary sensation, leaving them responsive only to extremes. Some turn toward oral excess and become noise marines, their minds attuned only to deafening sound and the wild chords of sonic weapons. They offer service to any master who will indulge their appetite for decadent rites. The discipline they once possessed now feeds a terrifying intensity. Freed from restraint, their superhuman bodies become instruments of cruelty and ecstasy. Those most inventive in atrocity often rise to lead their own debased followers, and their deeds echo as grim warnings. They remain hedonists of the flesh, yet they depend upon their ancient battle plate. Slaanesh grants favored warriors the gift of feeling pleasure and pain through ceramite as though it were skin. Each impact against their armor becomes a thrill of sublime agony. In close combat, they find their purest delight. The cut of a blade, the sting of a riposte, even the taste of blood along steel, all are intoxicating. Pain does not weaken them. It invigorates them beyond mortal comprehension. Perfection is rarely within reach in the mortal world. Life is brief, and time moves forward without mercy. Yet there are places where time bends and loosens its hold, where it may slow, halt, or turn upon itself. The Eye of Terror and the Screaming Vortex are such realms, riven by the warp. Within those shifting domains, the veterans of the Long War experience time differently. It becomes a tool rather than a burden. They spend it refining their skills, plotting revenge, and practicing their deadly arts until practice edges toward perfection. The Emperor's children, freed from what they call the shackles of imperial dogma, have lingered for thousands of Terran years in that strange freedom. Hatred of the Emperor burns within them. Yet unlike others, they savor the intensity of that emotion. In the borderlands between real space and the realm of chaos, they can linger over sensation, drawing it out and tasting it slowly. They immerse themselves in torment and distraction, experimenting with new ways to pursue vengeance. In their view, Khorne may be satisfied with killing and Sinch with schemes, but a warrior of Slaanesh seeks experiences beyond mere death. Within timeless realms, they can explore every cruel possibility, unhurried, and indulge in each sensation as long as desire demands. Much of the ancient imperial record of the Third Legion's founding still endures, and within those preserved lines there is a clear impression of what their gene seed created. It shaped warriors with finely sculpted physiques and a noble bearing, their thoughts disciplined and carefully controlled, their minds inclined toward personal achievement and the quiet contest of proving superiority. Only the slightest physical variations appeared. At times there was albinism, and in some recruits the iris shifted to a striking violet. Yet these changes did nothing to diminish the aura of aesthetic refinement that clung to the Legion from its earliest days. Even then, their space marines were regarded as an archetype, an example against which other Astartes were measured. After the Legion was nearly destroyed in the wake of its founding, when gene seed was accidentally lost and a viral blight took hold, surviving fragments from the Codex Apothecary in Terra reveal how uncompromising the standards became. Absolute excellence was demanded of those apothecaries entrusted with the precious genetic material. That strict discipline merged naturally with the Legion's own belief in perfection, and before the Horus Heresy, their gene seed was considered perhaps the most pure and stable among all the Space Marine legions. Only the finest physical specimens of human male adolescents were ever chosen for implantation, and so the mutation rate remained almost non-existent. Psychers were nearly absent within the Legion, for even a beneficial mutation would have been seen as a flaw against the ideal of physical and spiritual perfection. Each enhancement worked at peak efficiency. In battle, these warriors could reach the full measure of their potential, a standard no other legion achieved. The knowledge and skill required to maintain such purity have never been rediscovered in the many millennia that followed the Horus Heresy. Yet, like all the traitor legions, corruption came in time. Their gene seed is now so riddled with chaos-driven mutations that it can no longer create new heretic Astartes. And so, if they wish to increase their numbers, they must steal pure gene seed from loyalist Space Marine chapters whenever opportunity allows, should they ever turn their attention from their own indulgences long enough to care. There is armor known as the armor of abhorrence, a canvas of the perverse that turns its bearer into an effigy of excess. Captured warriors are fixed upon its battle plate, forming a mosaic of dark exuberance that delights the Emperor's children and fills their enemies with revulsion. In the moment of battle, those who face it hesitate, their horror slowing their hands, and before clarity returns, the bearer is already among them. Blissgiver, the long-tongued whip called a rapture lash, carries a different cruelty. Its sting does not simply wound. It overwhelms. Those who feel it are drowned in indescribable pleasure, their vows and duties washed away in sensation. For a few fragile heartbeats, they know ecstasy and agony entwined, and then their lives are torn from them. Some weapons arrive shrieking through the air like the bolts of ecstatic fixation. These mass-reactive rounds carry no explosive charge, only a cerise gas that seeps into the mind. Even the strongest bunker offers little shelter, for the pink vapor coils and surges, and those who inhale it drift into a hallucinatory fugue, where dreams and nightmares blend into a fevered vision. There is a sword called Distortion, flawless and gleaming. In its surface, the bearer sees beauty without equal, a vision of perfection. Yet the truth is far different. The one who wields it is a hideous mutant, their elegance drained away to feed the blade's terrible edge. The endless grin began as the flayed face of a man who begged Slaanesh for immortality. The Dark Prince granted the wish and forced that living face to be presented to the Chaos Lord Shiksai. After killing the supplicant, Shiksai wore the face for centuries. It has passed from hand to hand since then, but its anguish endures, spreading to all who behold it and do not serve Slaanesh. Fatal sonancy rests within the neck as xenotech implants, allowing a scream that can shatter diamond. The sound is layered with resonant frequencies and psychic force, striking like a physical blow. Flesh and bone alike are broken, reduced to trembling ruin beneath the impact. There is an intoxicating elixir whispered about in many ways. Some claim it was brewed by the homunculi fleshcrafters of Camorra, others that it is nectar from Slaanesh's gardens, or even the demonic blood of Fulgrim. The liquid renews itself endlessly. Those who drink it draw upon dark physical power, and the Emperor's children channel it through dispenser arrays, pouring it into their veins without restraint. The Raimond Revulsive hangs as a cloak stitched from the skins of defeated mortals. From its hide come the screams of still living faces, a harsh music to Slaaneshi ears. It fills the wearer with contempt and confidence, certain of victory, certain that more hides will be added to its dreadful length. There exists a remnant of the Maravikla, a recording of the chaos-laced symphony played at the dawn of the Horus Heresy. That performance marked the Legion's descent into debauchery and darkness. When the recording is broadcast through Voxcasters built into armor, even a few solar seconds are enough to drive the servants of Slaanesh into a frenzy of excess. Shriekwave, an ornate doom siren, releases a thunderous bass and a scream that can shatter diamond. The sound crushes thought in an instant. Only the strongest will can endure it, for those who surrender are broken apart by the crushing resonance. And then there is the soul snare lash, another fleshy rapture lash, steeped in the sweat of 6 keepers of secrets during their forbidden rites. Its barbed hooks and warm coils seem almost alive. When it binds a victim, etheric fire consumes the soul, drawing it away into eternal anguish within the infernal circles of Slaanesh's realm. The Emperor's children once moved through the void with a fleet that reflected their pride and their excess. At its heart sailed the pride of the Emperor, a vast Gloriana-class battleship that served as the flagship of Primarch Fulgrim and the Third Legion. It had been completed by the Mechanicum of Mars 160 standard years before the Horus Heresy began, more than a solar decade after Fulgrim was rediscovered on Kamos in 830 of the 30th millennium. Long before the war, it already carried the weight of destiny. Close to Fulgrim's side traveled his personal assault ship, the Firebird, crafted to his own design. Around these flagships gathered battle barges, such as the Agony and the Ecstasy, the Calidora and the Proudheart, the latter a modified Dictatus-class battleship that bore Lord Commander Eidolon as its own master. The Emperor-class battleship Erewhon and the Grand Cruiser Ravisher added their strength, the Ravisher leading battle group Jewel Shard under Legion Consul Azael Koninos, known as the orchestrator of the cacophony. Among these vessels, the Andronius held a quieter and more unsettling role. Sometimes called the Andronicus, it sheltered Chief Apothecary Fabius and his private laboratory, where he began the experiments meant to reshape the genetic template of the Astartes. From that work came the first Noise Marines and many other atrocities. The ship could serve as a secondary flagship, and in the early days of the Horus Heresy, it was commanded by Lord Commander Eidolon as it led the Legion's contingent at the Battle of Istvan III. Within, the Andronius stretched the Gallery of Swords, running the length of the warship beneath a transparent roof, lined with statues honoring the Legion's heroes. After the change of allegiance, those statues were altered. some crudely reshaped into bull-headed monsters. Below that gallery, hidden behind a vast mosaic in the central apothecarium depicting Fulgrim's victory at Tarsus, lay the biomedical facility where Fabius pursued his grim work. In the end, the Andronius met its destruction when the Sisypheum rammed it at phenomenal speed as it attempted to dock and board the Iron Hand's vessel, its hull torn apart in the collision. Other strike cruisers such as the Longinus and the Stealth moved through the fleet, the latter sometimes used by Fulgrim himself. Cruisers of uncertain class, including the Aquiline, the Excessive, the Infinite Variety, and the Mortal Splendor, formed the core of Lord Commander Eidolon's fleet at the Battle of the Gallium Gate and in the track for the 5th Legion. The Suzerain, another cruiser, was charged with guarding the Memnos convoy when it came under attack by the White Scars Legion. Escorts like Fulgrim's Virtue, the Golden Mean, and the Infinite Sublime accompanied the larger ships, the last 2 shielding the Calidora. The lunar-class cruiser Quartz Hazet, a Halcyon variant, flew as the flagship of Kasperos Delmar, called the Radiant King. Another Halcyon variant, the Pulchritudinous, was built in the Martian orbital shipyards and commanded by Fabius Bile. Telemachon knew it as the Flesh Market. During the Legion Wars, it was taken by the Black Legion at the Battle of Harmony, and there Ezekiel Abaddon slew Bile's clone of Horus. By that time, the vessel had become a laboratory of engineered horrors, crowded with mutants and even clones of other Primarchs, and after its capture, its ultimate fate faded into uncertainty. The Vesalius, a Gladius-class frigate captured and renamed by Fabius Bile, changed as well under his hand. Xenotech and other heretical devices were woven into its structure, and its machine spirit was altered until its sentience edged toward what was called abominable intelligence. The Herald of Pain served as the flagship of Excrucius the Flawless, a chaos lord of the Emperor's children, while the heavy cruiser Sybarite fought in the battles of the Horus Heresy. Even a space Hulk, the Cataclysm of Faith, entered their service in the Terran years after the Great Scouring. Deep within its corridors, the Wolf Lord Eska Probimlep was slain, and in response, a combined fleet from several loyalist chapters of the Adeptus Astartes waged a long campaign against it. Space Wolves, Dark Angels, Ultramarines, White Scars, and some of their successors joined in that struggle before the final battle was fought above and upon the desert world of Yela. Through all of this, many of the Legion's ships launched smaller interceptor craft known as Raptors. Imperial records speak of them only in fragments, leaving their exact nature and role uncertain. Small shadows darting from the greater forms that carried the pride and the ruin of the Emperor's children. From the courts of Europa to the burning skies of Terra, the path of the Third Legion was never ordinary. They were born of noble blood and ancient pride, tempered in the Unification Wars, and raised high above all others with the gift of the Palatine Aquila. For a time, they did not merely serve the Imperium, they embodied its promise. They endured ruin when their Jaren seed was nearly lost. They stood at the brink of extinction with only 200 warriors to bear their colors. They were reforged by the coming of Fulgrim, who brought not only strength but vision ambition. In those early years, silver and imperial purple marked warriors who carried the Emperor's will across the stars, steady and assured. Yet the same hunger that drove them to surpass every rival became the crack in their foundation. Perfection, once a discipline, turned inward. Honor became comparison. Comparison became resentment. And resentment, whispered to by a blade taken from a fallen temple, became devotion to something far older and far more patient than ambition alone. The fall of the Emperor's children was not a single moment. It was not only the duel beneath darkened skies, nor the virus bombs falling upon loyal sons, nor the music that split reality aboard a flagship theater. It was a slow turning, a belief that excellence demanded more, that more demanded sacrifice, and that sacrifice need not have limits. In the end, the legion that had once borne the Emperor's own standard came to chase a different light. It shone brighter, harsher, unbound by restraint. It promised sensation without end and victory without flaw. And so the Phoenician rose, not as the exemplar of measured greatness, but as something radiant and terrible. His sons followed, their armor still gleaming in purple and gold, their pursuit of perfection undimmed, only changed. Where once they were his voice, they became an echo. Where once they sought to surpass expectation, they now seek to transcend mortality itself. The eagle still spreads its wings across history, but in the long shadow cast by silver and amethyst, it is no longer clear whether it rises toward the light or circles it endlessly, drawn to a glow that never fades.